Assalamu alaikum and hello all. Today we are discussing a very important and interesting topic, which is open source engineering. With the open source team lead at Nevercode, aka Code Magic, Helina. Hello, Helina, and thanks for your time. I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us what do you do at Code Magic.
Hello, and thanks for inviting me. So, as you said, I lead the open source engineering team, and with that team, we primarily contribute to Flutter and some other products related to Flutter, such as Firebase for Flutter and Google Ads mobile for Flutter.
Interesting. So let's start by talking about the open source engineering. Can you define what open source engineering means and how it differs from traditional engineering, the one we know?
Sure. So if we think about software development, then an open source software project is the kind of project whose source code is public. It means that anyone can view it, can modify it, and can contribute to it. And it is contrasted with closed source or proprietary software, which is private. And lots of companies consider the source code there like trade secret. And if we had to think of like famous examples, then the Android operating system, for example, is open source. So pretty much anyone could take the source code and modify it. And some mobile phone manufacturers have actually done it, like Samsung. Yes. And in contrast, the iOS operating system is by Apple is closed source, very closed. But I think there are also like hybrid approaches where like part of the source code is private and some components are publicly accessible, such as you can take like Code Magic example. The source code for the Code Magic CI/CD is private, but we have built the Code Magic CLI tools, which are open source. The code is publicly accessible on GitHub. Anyone can actually use the source code, so they can file issues or contribute to it.
Interesting, cool. So to give some examples, can you provide an example of a successful open source engineering project, even though I already know the answer because it's the most important and successful open source project, and how it has impacted the whole industry?
Yeah, so for mobile app developers, I would say like definitely Flutter is one of the most well-known open source projects, and this is something I also know the most about because I work with it in my day-to-day job. And I would say actually Flutter's impact on the mobile industry has been enormous. It started out as a cross-platform framework for building mobile apps, but over the couple of years, it has extended to supporting also the web and desktop platforms. And when it was first released, the first stable version was released in 2018, lots of people questioned it. Can it be a match for native app development? You know, is it mature enough? But ever since its popularity has really skyrocketed. Yes. And I don't know if you've seen this, but the Flutter team recently published their strategy for 2023, and the document is public. And from the data in this document, we know that today, every fifth new mobile app is built with Flutter. And on Google Play, there are over 700,000 apps that have been created with Flutter. So, and actually, if I can like back it up with my personal experience, I've seen this trend myself, because in the early days of Flutter, when we needed to hire for Flutter roles, it was actually really difficult to find people with experience in Flutter. And when I look for new team members today, I get lots of very good candidates that have extensive background in Flutter. And what is maybe interesting is that when I talk to them, lots of them have previous experience with native app development.
Yes.
And now they have found Flutter, and they tell me that there's no going back. They're not going back to native app development. So I'm pretty confident that Flutter has come to stay, and we'll see great things happening.
Actually, that's my case, because at my early days, I was a native Android developer. I started like Kotlin and then Java, but at 2020, I think, or 2019, I saw Flutter. First of all, the first look I looked at it, and I saw Ionic and React Native, and I saw that's not promising. That's not the hype. I thought for a couple of years it will just rise and then like the rest of them, but no. It as you say, it was very successful, and the numbers prove it, and the number of the community that supported. And I think a part of this success is the support of the community and the contributors from the community, because that in my opinion, Flutter equals community. Without the community, I think Flutter wouldn't be at its current place. So that leads to the other question: how does the open source community contribute to the development and the improvement of an engineering of some projects?
Yeah, so first of all, let me say that I totally agree with what you said, that without the support of the community, there wouldn't be a Flutter project, because the core Flutter team, or the team working for Google, is actually quite small. And if there wasn't anyone else contributing, Flutter wouldn't be what it is today. And actually, there are lots of ways how members of the community can contribute to the project. So since the source code is public, and also the issue tracker and the backlog is public, then maybe the easiest way to contribute to the project is to file an issue if you encounter one while working with Flutter. Or you can also submit a feature request to kind of indicate where you want Flutter to go and what features they should build next. And in this backlog, I would say users have lots of influence over what the Flutter team should prioritize next, because there's an option to upvote issues. And I know for sure that the Flutter team really takes a look at the number of upvotes on issues. So that's like one of the easiest ways to influence where the project is going. At the same time, I think we cannot underestimate the importance of communities around Flutter. There are lots of community groups on Twitter or in Slack or Discord, and actually or on YouTube. And I would say these kinds of people play an important role in advancing Flutter, because they're there to spread the word and educate the user base, which can actually lead to an even bigger adoption of Flutter. And of course, like there's also an opportunity to actually submit some code to the Flutter project, like Never Code, that contribute to Flutter. And this is something that kind of is a two-way street, in a sense that these companies have adopted Flutter in their they're relying on this technology, and in return they're also contributing to it.
Yes. Okay, I think in the Arab world we do not have that mindset, unfortunately. So that's why I'm. By the way, this is my first English video at my Arabic YouTube channel. So, but I figured that it's important to educate my audience to show them that there's a career. There's an engineering called open source engineering, which is important, and you should look into it as a full-time job or as a part-time job to help the community to improve yourself, improve your code. One important thing, when you look into others' code, you immediately get better when you're writing new code, and eventually you'll improve your CV when you apply for a new job. And I think that's most of the concerns for beginners. Okay, let's talk now about the challenges. What are some of the challenges you have faced when implementing open source engineering practices in a project, especially that in this project? So, for example, when we in a small company working on a product for this company, there's 4, 5, 6 developers are contributing to this closed repository, and we know the approaches we go in this company. So this architecture or this way of writing code. But when it comes to open source engineering, and especially a large repositories, so you're dealing with hundreds of developers, each one writes in his way. So can you talk about the challenges?
Yeah, so that is a good point you mention, and I sincerely believe that for any open source project to be successful in terms of getting outside contributions, it would have to be very well documented. And if you take a look at the Flutter project, there's a contribution guide that you need to familiarize yourself with before you can contribute. There's the style guide to which your code contributions have to conform to, because otherwise you cannot merge a pull request that doesn't follow the style guide. But I would say it is also important that you're aware of the core values and principles of the project. And all these documents, they describe what kind of contributions are expected from anyone contributing to the project, what you should work on, and what are the rules. And I believe this is something that also gives contributors some autonomy, because they can take this documentation, they can read it, and they can get started with something based on those guidelines. Another important thing that immediately pops into my mind is actually the issues. Since, well, let's take Flutter, for example. It has a public issue tracker, and which is also the backlog for the project. And when you, as a contributor or a member of the community, you file an issue, you have this expectation that you want to hear back from the maintainers. You don't want your issue to go unnoticed. Yes. And with a large project such as Flutter, there is already currently over 10,000 open issues, which can be like a bit intimidating. Yeah. But for that, there can be like dedicated people who actually help with the issues. And this is what we also do at Nevercode. We have a team that we call the Triage team, whose responsibility is to keep the issues under control in the repository. On average, we see up to 200 new issues a week reported. But the truth is that not all of those issues are valid, or not all of those issues are
Yes.
actionable. So what the team does is they actually validate all the issues. They make sure that if an issue is a duplicate of an existing issue, then they will close it in favor of the other issue. And they also go back and forth with the author of the issue to make sure the issue has clear steps on how to reproduce it, because
Yes.
that significantly increases the chances of the issue getting fixed. A low quality issue with a vague description of the problem does not lead anywhere and will ultimately get closed. So definitely keeping an eye on your issues and sending people the signal that your voice is being heard, I think is very important.
Yes. Back to the triage team. So its own responsibilities is to filter the issues, or just let's say shortlisted the issue to go to the next step, which is actually fixing the issues by the developers. So that's their own responsibilities, or it's just a naming?
It's the most important thing is to make valid issues actionable, and for that there can be providing a code sample that reproduces the issue, making sure the issue title is descriptive of the problem, and when all of these steps have been done, then we use actually labels to route the issue to the respective engineering teams for fixing. And if the issue reaches the engineering team, then they can take the next steps, like prioritize it and fix it.
I see. But the triage team is not responsible for fixing any issues.
In our setup, no. We have other people that actually contribute with PRs to fix issues. So in our case, the triage team only makes the issues actionable.
I see.
So and there are other people that fix the issues, and I would say the main reason for that is in Flutter alone, the influx of new issues is so high that actually the team does not have the time to spend a lot of time on a single issue. But we do provide a lot of value by handing over the issues to the engineering team. So they have a well-documented issue with a code sample, maybe with the screenshots and video, so they can actually start digging in and fixing the issue. So cannot really underestimate the importance of this job.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about you. How do you manage and organize a team working of an open source engineering project? Let's say at Nevercode, because you're the team lead there.
So as has been described, our case is somewhat different from regular contributors from the community, because we do this professionally, and obviously this means we have certain service level objectives we need to meet in order to do our job well. I would have to say that for me as a team lead, it's important to make sure that everything we do is aligned with Flutter's roadmap, and is aligned with their goals. Because, for example, that means that we, with our code contributions, we actually focus on certain areas, and we make sure there is constant progress in those areas. And for the triage part, our main goal is to make sure that none of the issues fall through the cracks, none of the issues go unnoticed. And for me as a team lead, the key thing is to find a team of like-minded people that are actually passionate about Flutter and also passionate about open source. And I have to say that this far we've managed to do it. and each and every person on the team is doing their best to actually try and make Flutter better. And as the team lead, I just make sure that we stay focused. We don't forget why we're doing this. And as in every project, there are like always ways to improve or optimize. And this is something where I'm most involved in.
Okay, how do you see the future of open source engineering evolving in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years in general?
So my personal opinion is that open source projects will become like increasingly more popular and more important. And why I believe that is that more and more people get access to good education. They get access to software engineering and learn programming. And I feel like lots of developers are actually looking for meaningful ways of interacting with other developers. And open source projects can definitely be that's one of those mediums for engaging with other developers. So that is my personal opinion, but I did come across of an article on Forbes that's actually quite recent that also discussed what's the future of open source engineering. And the conclusion drawn in this article was that even though there are its risks, open source projects are the future. So lots of the world is moving towards open source because this allows them to innovate and benefit from the contributions from of the community.
Yes. Okay, I just remembered the question regarding the previous topic. So I believe right now you have an open role at Nevercode as an open source engineering. So I'm not sure what's its current status right now, but can you talk about the experience, for example, the number of candidates, their experience? So I think that would reflect the mindset of the community as they applying for a full-time job as an open source engineering to contribute to one of the most famous framework for mobile applications.
Yeah, that is true. I'm actually looking for a new team member, and compared to previous times when I've done this, there was a lot of interest in this position this time, and I received so many applications. This definitely shows that there is a lot of interest in people to work with Flutter and to contribute to open source. And I have to say that it has been really difficult to kind of do the first selection of like who to even invite for an interview, because lots of the people, they seem to have the full package. They have native mobile app development experience, they have professional experience with Flutter, and they have the desire to contribute to open source. So while I see this as a positive sign overall, it has made my life much more harder. and maybe another interesting thing is that actually in this area where like remote work is has become normal, there are like people applying from all sorts of countries.
Yes.
From Brazil to like African countries, India, Europe, so you name it.
Yes. Actually, if it's not for that, we wouldn't have this conversation right now, because each one of us it's in a different country, and the whole company and most of the companies right now have the mindset of remote working. It's something very important and it kind of appeared in 2020 with the COVID, but I think it's very important. So if we talk about remote work, how would affect the open source or contributing to open source project? I think that would definitely help, because you don't have to be at the same place with the other team. All the developers are around the world contributing to this project. So I think that would affect it positively.
Yeah, sure. And in our case, I would say that our open source engineering team has been always very distributed geographically. And the main reason for that is we simply couldn't find anyone on the spot for this role. And yeah, our company really has this mindset that we're very open to remote work. And we would gladly give anyone an opportunity, provided that they have the right skill set and the right mindset, and they're like a culture fit. So that is something I find very important personally. The only limitation we have set for this role is to be within 4 hours from the Estonian time zone.
Yes.
And this is because we want to work together as a team, and we want to collaborate. We want to discuss the issues. We want to share knowledge. And that will be very hard if you don't have a significant overlap with your teammates. So that is the only reason why we have this requirement like on our team.
Yes. I think it's important for most of the roles. Even though you are working remotely, you do not actually see your teammates, but it's cool when you log in into Slack and see the other team are currently active, and you can first of all discuss the work issues, ask any questions for help, and the other things, like in our case we have the random channel where we just post normal stuff, some funny tweet, or any joke. So that would give you a sense of you are actually working. You're not just fully.
Even though you're like maybe working alone from your room, and you never have like physical contact with your teammates, but getting together in a channel, discussing trivial stuff in addition to work-related stuff really helps to create this sense of belonging to the team, and having a team that is there to support you and talk to you.
Yes. Okay, so lastly, what advice would you give to someone who is interested in getting involved in open source engineering, and how to get started?
I've heard from many people that they tell me that I've always wanted to contribute to Flutter, but I don't know how to get started, or they feel like they're not senior enough, to work with those people from Google that like maintain this project. But actually, my advice would be to start small. Doesn't have to be a PR, but it can just be, filing an issue. Or helping to debug an issue. That's actually really valuable if someone can confirm that by following these steps they can reproduce the issue. Or it can be fixing something in documentation, because you can never underestimate the importance of good documentation.
Yes.
And if you're like getting more serious about this, then probably pick an area you're interested in, something you have experience with, and start looking into the source code. And also the maintainers often label some issues as easy fix or good first issue, which might be like worth looking into if you're like really serious about contributing the code. And finally, I think a quality you need in order to be a successful contributor is you need to be persistent. Because even when you pick an issue you think that you could fix, you start looking into it and it turns out to be more complicated than you expected. Or as I mentioned, like Flutter has lots of guidelines on how you should like structure your pull requests, what's the style guide. And they also have the requirement of covering all the changes with tests. So you need to be ready to put in time and effort in really like finalizing the pull request. And even though your like pull request looks fine to you, you might receive feedback from the maintainers who are asking you to make changes. So you need to be ready to go back and forth with the maintainers and improve in order to get the pull request landed. So persistence is really needed if you're serious about this.
Yes. I think that's it. First of all, thank you so much, because from my side and for sure for my audience, this would be very, very helpful, because as I said, that's not a very famous term in our countries, so that would help hopefully anybody. So thanks, Helina, thanks for your time, and hopefully we can someday talk about another topic.
Thank you for inviting me. This was a new experience for me as well. But I also want to spread the word and encourage everyone to get started with open source if that's something they're interested in. So thanks for inviting me. It was fun.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.